made it down here to the museum, which is at the bottom of the Royal Institution. Now, not only are we really lucky to be here, and look at it, Jack, it is absolutely packed with lots of artefacts. Now, we'd encourage any of you to come along to London if you've got a couple of hours kicking around, get yourself in here because you can really see where it all started.
And it's free.
Oh, like that.
This was one of the world's first electric batteries. This was given to Michael Faraday by Voltaire in 1814. This is known as the voltaic pile.
So you join me and Jake down in the basement of the Royal Institution, and we are here, Jake, where it all started.
Yes. Michael Faraday is a magnetic laboratory, mate.
I know, fantastic. To think that this is where it all started. Without this, there would be no electrical industry. So look at that. It's absolutely amazing to think this is where it all started. Now look. Should we go and have a look?
Let's get in there, mate.
Look at this. Wow. I can't believe they let us in here, to be honest with you. I mean, I've had to wait a long time to get in here, but you've just rocked up and got in. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
2 centuries untouched.
I mean, I think we have to thank the Royal Institution for looking after it, like they have done, without a doubt. Look at this, unprecedented. This is what it was like way back in the day. I mean, look at the floor and the bits and bobs. It's just unbelievable.
One of the most iconic objects in here. This is Faraday's generator, mate.
Yeah, that's one of the first generators around. Now, Jake, this here is a very simple magnet. We think of it simple nowadays, but back then it wouldn't have been simple. It would be quite hard to construct.
Yeah.
As you see, there's some wires that go around a magnet, and by moving the magnet through, you then was able to create and generate energy. Now, the wires in there, believe it or not, Jake, they actually were quite hard to get hold of. You could just pop along to the wire shop and get some. You had to go along to places where they made corsets or hat straighteners, and that's where he then started to get it. But not only that, but you never got any wire that was insulated back then. So they had to insulate them by hand. So, amazing bit of work. Just to get that was an absolutely amazing bit of work. God knows how many weeks, days, months that would have taken, but superb.
Here we have the earliest motor in existence today. Now Faraday would have made this back in 1821, and what would have happened would be the magnet would rise up there, the mercury would sit inside, and the intricate piece of wire here would actually rotate around the magnet. So this converts electrical energy into mechanical energy. Without this, you probably would see things like electric vehicles, fridge freezers, washing machines, anything that has a motor in it today.
Without a doubt, we're really lucky to be here and have access to this magnetic laboratory. Now, here, there's loads and loads of artefacts, and the one just above me up here was what Faraday used when he was looking to try and change the lighthouses as they were and get them all to run on electric. So up there was one of the very first things that we used out there in the public. So this apparatus here helped move one of the first lighthouses in Kent in 1859 from burning what they used to use wood and coal over to electrical. So there it is up there for us to have a look at. But whilst I've been having a look around, I think Jake's got something else for us over there. What you got, mate?
That's right, mate. I found myself a giant magnet. Now this was taken from a ship and it's part of an anchor. And what he would have done was feed copper wire around the anchor to generate electricity, and at the time this would have been the most powerful magnet going. And here behind me we have Faraday's travelling microscope, and he used to use this all across the world from 1820 to 1867.
Something that's really impressed me in our short visit here is just the access that we've been given. Now, looking around here, the things that are still lying around from way back when, there's still the hand tools that he would have used. Now, this guy must have been absolutely brilliant. It was cutting edge what he was doing. But in order to try and visualise how electric worked, I mean, you couldn't really see this. He had to try and make things as he was going. So some of the hand tools that he's got here, just to actually try and make the stuff and put it together so we can all visualise what was actually happening with this electric that no one really knew a lot about. It was unbelievable. And let's think about it. Without any of this, you wouldn't have any electric drills, anything like that, and I think there's only Tony Cable that can remember what life was like without one. Now, he had a little bit of help because he was the son of a blacksmith, so some of these tools weren't foreign to him. He saw his dad using them and he knew how to use them. So I can see over there some pliers, and I'm dying to touch them, but I'm being watched and I'm not allowed. But these are all the tools that he would have been using to create a lot of the stuff that we take for granted. Right, only one thing really left to do, and that's to say thank you to the Royal Institution and to Professor Frank James, who's, without a doubt, you've looked after that place amazingly well. Could you give the key back, James?
That's it, mate. Thank you for a fantastic morning, Frank.
Oh, without a doubt, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been absolutely brilliant here, looking at all the artefacts. We've got to crack on now.
What a fantastic report there from Darren J. Genuinely, I had no idea this place was so instrumental of the electrification. It's now a good time to tell the whole nation I cannot read. Electrification of the entire planet. Second time, still flunked it. This was actually Faraday's original lab there, as you saw, left undisturbed for 2 centuries. And we have to thank the Heritage and Collections Department of the Royal Institution for granting us permission to film inside. Now, Faraday lived and worked in this very building for over 5 decades. He's arguably the most important figure in the history of the electrical industry. So I think it's about time we find out who he was and where he came from.
I was born in London in the year of our Lord 1791 as the son of a blacksmith. Mother and father were poor, but they wanted the best for me, so they sent me to a day school. There I learnt how to read and write, which was more than most people could do at that time. In fact, many of the children I used to play with ended up working in factories by the time they were 5 or 6. Life was difficult for our family. Father was troubled by ill health, but he was a skilled craftsman, so we got by. As a young boy, I spent many hours in the forge watching him hammer away at the anvil, making horseshoes and iron tools. I was fascinated by the glow of the hot iron and how he was able to shape it into all kinds of objects. So Father taught me his techniques. These were skills I put to good use later in life, whenever I needed to make apparatus for my scientific experiments. When I turned 13, Father said I needed to earn a living. There was a small bookshop around the corner, so I asked the owner, Mr. Rebo, for a job as an errand boy. At first, all I did was deliver books to customers in the city. But I was bright, hard-working, and clever with my hands, so Mr. Rebo taught me the trade of bookbinding. After 7 years, I completed my apprenticeship and became known as something of an expert. Best of all, I was allowed to read all of the books I made. I read every scientific book I could get my hands on, especially the articles about electricity in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Then one day, something happened that would change the course of my life, and some might say the course of human history, forever. One of the shop's regular customers was a certain Mr. Dance. He was a member of the Royal Institution in Mayfair. He was so impressed by my work that he offered me a ticket to attend the lectures of a famous young scientist called Humphrey Davy. Here in the institution in 1812, I watched Davy explain his latest insights in chemistry. He was the most brilliant man I've ever come across, so I made notes of all his lectures. Then I took the bold and simple step of writing to Sir Humphrey and presenting him with my notes, which I'd turned into a 300-page book. Davy was impressed, but he told me to forget about science, as there was no money in it. Then a few months later, Davy was injured by an explosion in his lab, which damaged his eyesight. He remembered my notes and he offered me a job as his laboratory assistant. So, here I found myself, at the age of 21, the self-taught son of a blacksmith, working for Sir Humphrey Davy at the Royal Institution.
Fascinating insight into the early life of a true genius. Thank you, Michael Faraday. Well, now we have another piece of electrical history to show you, so let's welcome back Anne Locker. Come on down. Hello, Anne. Oh, a wonderful other artifact. I feel like I should wear some of those mime gloves. We're right to touch.
No, we are fine to touch it.
Am I right to touch
Yes,
it?
yes, it's
Okay,
good.
you pop that there.
Pop this
I'll
here
just
for
say,
you.
actually, for everybody who's been joining us from around the country in the cinemas, thank you for staying with us. I know we've had a bit of trouble. It ain't easy getting around to 60,000 odd people, wherever it is, but 40 cinemas, so thank you for staying with us. Okay, so tell us what we've got here.
Well, we've just heard from Michael Faraday, and this is Faraday's own diary. So he wrote this in 1813, and this was after he'd been offered a job by Sir Humphrey Davy, but before he started working at the Royal Institution.
Wow, okay, this is the genuine, the actual handwritten one. So this is so a year after he started working with Humphrey Davy. Back in that day, obviously, very difficult to get around horse and carriage.